Hey everybody, Chris here from Protocase with another Proto Tech Tip, and today I'm going to show you how to distribute objects in Protocase Designer. So last week I showed you the align function inside Protocase Designer to properly align your cutouts and graphics on your design. Using the distribute function is another great way to streamline your work and work smarter, not harder, in order to make sure that the objects that you place on your design are situated exactly as you want them to be. There are 10 different ways that you can distribute objects inside Protocase Designer, and I'm going to go over each one of them for you now. And remember, when I say objects, I mean anything that you place inside Protocase Designer's face editor. These objects can be cutouts, graphics, fasteners, accessories and components, masking, and constructs. So this distribute function allows all the objects inside Protocase Designer's face editor to all be evenly distributed apart from one another. When I select the objects that I want distributed, either by shift-clicking to select the objects or drawing a selection box around them, the software will determine which two objects are on the outermost boundary and distribute all of the other objects selected to be evenly distributed. So now I'm going to go back to my panel that I used to show the align function that already has my cutouts and labels for my audio-video components, DB9 connectors, and USB inputs. Now let me show you each of the distribute functions that you can use. The first button is called Distribute Origins Vertically. This one shifts the cutouts vertically so that there is equal space between objects according to their origins. The origins are the red dot on every object. And because we're looking at things from a vertical perspective, Protocase Designer will look at the two objects that are on the outermost boundary vertically, so the one that's the highest and the one that's the lowest, and move the objects in the middle to be evenly distributed between them. The next Distribute button is called Distribute Origins Horizontally. So when I select all of the objects and click the Distribute Origins Horizontally button, it's going to shift the middle objects to be evenly distributed between the outermost objects according to their origin. Next, we have Distribute Space Vertically. Similar to the Distribute Origins Vertically, this function will look at the two objects on the outermost vertical boundary, and it will shift the other objects vertically so that the space between them is distributed equally. The next button is Distribute Space Horizontally. Think the same idea as the last example, but instead of shifting the cutouts vertically, it's going to distribute the space horizontally. Moving down, we have the Distribute Tops of Objects button. As the button suggests, it shifts the objects vertically according to the top of each object. So obviously how your objects move is determined by the shape of the object. For instance, triangle objects will move differently than, say, the top of a rectangle. Next is the Distribute Left Sides of Objects. In this example, it's going to distribute space evenly between the middle objects horizontally according to each object's leftmost side. The next button is Distribute Centers Vertically, which is going to look at the object at the top and the one from the farthest down and distribute the other objects vertically so that the space between the center of each object has equal space between it. The next button is the opposite, Distribute Centers Horizontally. It's going to take the object at the far right and the object at the far left and distribute the other objects on a horizontal line so that the centers of each object are distributed evenly. The next button is Distribute Bottoms of Objects, which is going to move the objects vertically so that the bottommost points are all evenly distributed. And finally, we have the Distribute Right Sides of Objects button. This will take the right side of the objects within the boundary and move them horizontally so that there's even space between them. Now, in order to finish my panel project and have all of my cutouts and graphics evenly distributed, I'm going to use this distribute function. I'm going to reopen my panel file from where I left off last week. For time purposes, I have already went ahead and evenly distributed my DB9 cutouts and labels. So now, I'm going to evenly distribute my audio cutouts and graphics on the top left of my panel. First, I will select my cutouts and graphics vertically from left to right and use the Distribute Space Vertically button. This is going to align my cutouts and labels so that there's equal space between the outermost objects, which would be my labels, and the two circle cutouts in the middle. Next, I will use the Distribute Space Horizontally button and choose each row of objects separately. This is going to distribute the space evenly between the outermost objects and the two middle objects. So now, once I place the order inside the software, the panel is going to go through our manufacturing facility. And as promised from my last video, here is the finished panel in all of its glory. And as you can see, the cutouts and labels are all aligned and distributed to give it a neat and tidy look. So this concludes our review of the distribute function inside Protocase Designer. One thing to remember that I didn't mention earlier, in order to distribute objects inside the software, you need to have 3 or more objects, because Protocase Designer needs to be able to detect the 2 objects on the outermost boundary. If you have less, you're better off using the measurement tool inside the software, and we have a link to that tutorial in the description below. So thanks very much for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below or email us at info@protocase.com. And be sure to download Protocase Designer just to see for yourself why it's the fastest and easiest way to design, price, and build custom enclosures and parts. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.